countdown.
Actually, it shows you. At least it shows you now when we're counting down. We are live here on PhD Dynasty Podcast. This is, I spelled it wrong, Episod 84, apparently. Great sign for the start of the podcast, Episode 84. We are going to do quite a bit of draft talk today. Obviously, last time we were on the podcast, we were in San Antonio, Florida, talking about all kinds of prospect propaganda, which was exciting. Got a lot of good discussion with James Sifu down there about some kind of just like an overall view of the prospects, at least the top guys, top 10 or so. Today, we're going to take it a step further. Sean has completed a top 64 mock draft. So now we have landing spots based on his mock. And with those landing spots in mind, at the end of the show, we'll do a mock draft for the first round of our PHU Dynasty rookie draft. So we'll give you our thoughts on where these players might go given those landing spots. So I think it'll be a pretty fun exercise. But before we get to that, Sean will also has mocked a kind of a free agency rundown of where he thinks people might land, the quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, whatnot. Not a great free agency class, Sean. So I don't know how much there'll be to talk about there. But we will at least, give you the landing spots and kind of lay out what we think might happen. So as we go through the mock, I'll say this on the bottom, I have a ticker going for the landing spots. So as Sean goes through them, I'll put them into the ticker, and then later I'll share my screen. And we're gonna do a sleeper first round mock draft, so you guys can kind of see it in real time. So it should be a pretty fun episode here. I don't think we've ever really done anything like this, so it'll be cool. Sean, how you feeling today?
Dude, I'm great. Ready to get rolling. It's draft season. Over the last couple of years, I think I've enjoyed it more and more, getting more into like getting excited for like day 3 guys getting drafted is when you've hit like your peak of like I live for that.
So. I remember back in the FGCU days. There was the Roberto Aguayo draft specifically. I had a 200 player big board that I wrote on giant pieces of paper that I ended up throwing into the trash because I was so upset about the Roberto Aguayo trade. But then we also got EJ Manuel in that draft, which was we blew all the party poppers. Super fun. So it is fun when you get when you know a lot of the prospects. Even back then I was so into it. I knew defensive backs in the 6th round, but now I don't get quite that deep. But I'm really focused on every single rookie draft eligible, skill position guy. I know almost all of them, it seems like at this point, which is good.
And I feel like outside of like the top few guys, there's just not as much focus as there has been in previous years as far as like this guy's going to kind of land in this general area. I've seen guys in one mock draft that's like 10, and I'll see him in another mock draft where he's in like the 40s, and I'm like, holy shit!
It is crazy. And I think it was I can't remember if it was Daniel Jeremiah or one of the other podcasts I was listening to recently. Somebody that I respect definitely for sure was saying that he believes that there is a good 20 players in this draft of who he would consider first round picks. So because of that means we're going to get a lot of players that people might consider seconds or maybe even thirds that get bumped up into that, first or second round category, which is awesome.
You mix that with such a good crop of running backs that the position never gets drafted as high as it should or could be. You've got a bad quarterback class, which will get overdrafted, and it really just kind of mishmashes everything, and it makes things very hard to just kind of like stick and pick, and kind of like what the order is going to be. So it makes it fun. It makes the exercise.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun year for mocks for sure.
You're gonna have so many mock drafts this season because like we need one before free agency, after free agency, before the combine, after the combine, like all of these things. Like there's gonna be so many big swings. It feels like this year.
I also think this is gonna be a really fun year for like draft, prop gambling. Like, for example, like this player goes over under pick 19 or something like that. Like this year you could have anything, which is exciting. Like if you really believe in a player, it might actually you could make some real money on that. So
snap call real quick. What do you think the over under is going to be for Ginty in the NFL draft?
Like where his line will be? I'm
going to say 12.5.
12 seems safe. But because I also I have a really hard time with him because I feel like there's it would be one thing if, let's say you put Genty in last year's class, right? He's so clearly the best player, and he's definitely clearly the best player this year, but he's the best player at running back for sure last year. And there's
Oh,
not really a
yeah.
lot of depth last year.
There's goddamn state of Texas between him and the next prospect.
Oh, for sure. So what
Yeah.
I'm saying is, I mean, the point I'm trying to get to is here is like, I think there might be teams that would opt to wait on a running back as opposed to taking one high in the first. I could see a team like Dallas, for example. Like I saw somebody do this exercise. If McMillan and Genty is available at pick 12, do you think it would be better to take McMillan with that pick and then just in the second round, get one of those guys, or take Genty in the first and then kind of figure out other positions in the second? Like to me, I would feel better about taking a player at a more premium position this year in the first, and then using the depth of the class better in the second, third, and whatever.
That'll be such a great transition when we talk about my first round mock leader.
There we go. All right, so maybe we'll just wait. So let's get right into it, Sean. Let's start with the free agents because we'll try to do this somewhat chronologically so that the landing spots kind of make sense, and it can really lead up well to the rookie draft we have later. So Sean, go ahead and maybe start with quarterbacks, or do you have them? How do you have it laid out?
I ran a different tab, so I'm going to be on a different page here. But you just ask me the questions, or I can give you like the teams that are kind of in the market for a quarterback.
Okay, yeah. So start with the quarterbacks in general. Yeah.
So this counts for free agency and the draft. So they're all kind of lumped together. So we've got the Giants, obviously in need of a quarterback. That situation is dire. I think dire is the right word.
I would agree.
The Titans, the Browns, the Raiders, the Jets, the Colts.
It's a lot of teams.
The Colts have made public statements about needing competition at quarterback.
So I think they want competition everywhere.
The Steelers, and then I think the Vikings will be in this market softly just because of a rookie coming off of a fully missed year.
Yeah, they seem like a good veteran landing spot if they don't bring back Darnold.
So in this exercise, I have the Giants taking, and I don't want to get into the mock yet, so we'll just say they have a rookie quarterback going to the Giants. Plus, I have them signing Kirk Cousins.
Okay.
After he's inevitably cut from Atlanta.
Nobody's going to trade for him. I mean,
right. Yeah, he's going to be the Russell Wilson special where he gets paid a lot more to be on a different team.
To just leave, yeah. It's sad, but yeah.
Yeah, I've got the Titans signing Sam Darnold. I've got the Browns re-signing Jameis and just rolling back with Jameis for this season, and then maybe taking like we could talk about that too. I don't remember exactly where I have.
Yeah, he might not be first round relevant, but we can get there.
Yeah. The Raiders, I've got taking a rookie, also a candidate for taking like a vet quarterback with that, but I've got them taking a rookie. The Jets, I have signing Justin Fields. The Colts.
What a mess.
Yeah. The Colts taking or signing Russell Wilson as that competition piece.
That's such a Colts move.
The Steelers getting Aaron Rodgers, and then the Vikings keeping Daniel Jones after they had already signed him to their practice squad last year.
That makes a lot of sense. That really does make sense.
Yeah. And I saw today that there was interest from the Steelers in Daniel Jones as well.
Yeah, I heard somebody mention that this morning. I was like, is there a more Steelers quarterback than Daniel Jones? Like, he just fits. They love those kind of guys.
Anybody on that list that in particular stands out to you?
We'll talk about the rookies later. I guess, from a dynasty and fantasy relevant situation, I think Rodgers to the Steelers is very interesting because I don't think he's cooked. I still think he's got something there. And I feel like the Steelers is a place that he won't run the show. He won't be allowed to run the show.
No, Tomlin is very good at corralling personalities.
Yeah, like to me, that is a very Steelers-y type of thing for him to land there. And frankly, like he needs a guy like Pickens or like those kind of go up and just like make plays receivers, like he relying on one-on-ones like he did it the entire time at the Jets.
Bring over Devontae Adams too. Sure. I'm not sure what their salary situation is, but
I think they have a
see.
decent amount of space because they're not paying any quarterbacks really.
I'm so glad that I wrote down all of the cap space numbers for these teams too. The
Wow, you're
Steelers
a
have
legend.
53 million in cap space.
Yeah, so this shouldn't be a problem. You would think at least. It's
Yeah,
just
it
the
just
fact they're
really
not
depends
paying a
on what
quarterback.
Rodgers wants as a contract. Like if you can get him on the cheap,
Yeah, I wouldn't pay him $1. So I mean, like to me, like
sure.
I don't think he's gonna. I don't think he's gonna command big money. Nor, I
Mhm.
mean, it really just depends if he wants to play, I guess, at that point. But
Yeah.
I like that landing spot. I think Wilson to the Colts makes a lot of sense. As the classic veteran competition. There's not really like Darnold to the Titans is an interesting one because that would probably you would think that would dissuade them from taking a rookie quarterback at that point.
Definitely a first round one. Yeah.
Yeah, like maybe a second or a third. So that'll be interesting for your mock later. But no, like not a ton of surprises. All I know is it's just not a very good quarterback free agency crop. It's just not good. Like
Yeah. It's a
that's my
double whammy when you don't have a good draft class and the free agency is kind of lackluster. That's why you end up with reports of Stafford potentially being on the trade block, which I think is
yeah.
just public. It's public negotiating. I doubt that.
There's no way. Like, what are they gonna do? It's like
They,
that.
they gave the Eagles the best game that they had in the playoffs. They are not that far away from being legitimate. Like,
No, they rebuilt that whole defense in like a year, dude. Like it's
mhm.
crazy.
They need probably a good player in the secondary. They're gonna have to get another offensive tackle
Another
in the
receiver
draft
probably if Cup's
probably,
gone.
and then a receiver. And I feel like that. And then you've got continue like their staff is so good at developing young players, even like their day three guys that they've been getting over the last few years because they don't have any draft picks.
When
Like
does
they've
the
been
Rams
so
pick
good at
this
that.
year? Do they have a first? I
Yeah,
think they do. I mean, they
and
seem like a prime landing spot for a
they're
first round
25
receiver.
or 26.
Yeah, that'd be. I mean, that's like right in that Luther Burden area. Like one of those spots. Like I could see that happening. All right, let's keep it moving. Let's go to the running back landing spots that you have.
Yeah, it's a not great.
I know Najee Harris is out
So
there.
I have
I don't have the drop anymore. I got to re-get the drop again.
I don't even have a landing spot for Najee Harris yet. I just couldn't find one. This running back class in the draft is making it really hard for me to think that a team is going to want to spend any money on anybody out
It's not
there.
going to be like last year.
I feel comfortable with the Chargers bringing back Dobbins
Yeah,
because
some league
they
minimum contract
they
probably.
love him. Yeah. I put down, and this could also be Najee Harris as well, but I put Javonte Williams to Carolina because they're going to need
Just
another
depth.
running back for this
Yeah.
year, just like on a 1 year. And I don't think that after they put capital into a running back last year, I don't see them taking another running back this year.
They could take one late maybe or something, but nothing like like life changing. I think.
Yeah, I think it makes them a prime candidate for like a 1 year flyer on one of these free agents. I think that makes too much sense. And then you've got like the Dowdles, the Masons, Warrens. They just kind of have them all just kind of returning to those teams. And then now I'm thinking about Najee Harris, probably a good fit for.
I mean, yeah. While you're looking at, I'm going to look at the market value for these running backs because
Yeah, it's not
it
going to be
can't
good.
be good. It can't be
I,
good.
I can't see any of these guys hitting over 4 million per year. I just don't see
I
it.
mean, do you think
Yeah,
Najee gets more than 4? Like he's the only guy I can. Well, who else is Nick Chubb is out there, right?
Yeah, Chubb, I don't have a team for either. I just don't know. Maybe they bring him back. He's a Cleveland guy for life.
I mean, he's not.
Aaron Jones
He's
is
gonna
out
be
there as a
30.
free agent. Aaron
All
Jones
right.
is probably hitting his mercenary, like maybe he ends up on like the Chiefs or something this year kind of guy.
Market value. Wait, is Derrick Henry on a 1 year or 2 year?
He's going to go back to the Ravens. I don't think they're going to let him walk. I didn't even put him down as a free agent.
I thought he was on a 2 year anyway. Maybe he is.
He was. They were talking about a new deal though for him.
Okay, let's see here. Market values. So, this is the contract that they think they're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
So James Cook is a free agent technically?
No, he's going into year 4.
So this is
year.
all jacked up. Please hold.
Yeah. Well, have you seen all the stuff that he's posted on social?
It looks like he wants the fat cash. So
15 million.
That's
Which
exciting.
the new
Yeah.
salary cap is really not that big of a deal. It's not.
Well, I mean, like the thing is, I think obviously with Henry, Barkley, of course, like the idea that running backs can't get paid is kind of out. But
Yeah.
like there are values to be had for sure. Like there's nobody's going to go nuts and spend 50 mil on a running back
Without the bias of me as the owner for James Cook and Dynasty, like I think he's worth that just based off of like he's one of the very few running backs in the NFL where like he can get you a home run and score you 6 points from anywhere.
Yeah,
So
I mean, agreed. So Spot Rack has Najee Harris's average value or his market value at 3 or 29.
there's no way.
I don't see that.
Not with these rookies coming in. It's just
Now maybe
too good
3 or 29 with like a low cap hit. I could see it.
of
Like less
super
guaranteed
heavy
money.
incentive laden kind of contract.
Yeah,
like
because like let's say it's 3 or 27. Give him 15 guaranteed or whatever, and say like here's 2 years 7 or something like that. That makes sense. So like I think this probably takes into account that the cap hit might not be that high. But I don't feel good about spending any. Like I'm looking at the free agents. There's just not anybody that I feel good about spending more than 7.5 mil. I'm a Nick Chubb guy. I would give it to him because I love him. But
I'd rather find Ollie Gordon in like the 3rd round.
Yeah, like you can go out and get like Devin Neal in like the 5th round or 4th round, and you're probably going to be better off for that and way cheaper. So
yeah,
agreed there. Yeah, let's go to receivers then because that's also not good.
Obviously recent news makes it even worse. Like T Higgins most definitely going to be playing on the tag this year. I've got Godwin just coming back to the Bucks. I just think they understand how important he is to that team. I think, and just kind of the leadership culture that he kind of brings. That I think he's going to be especially like just with where they are as a team. I think it makes sense to bring him back. So I have him going back to the Bucks. I've got Amari Cooper to the Patriots. I've got Diggs to the Raiders. I wrote down DeAndre Hopkins. I just wrote down retire.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like he's cooked.
I think he might actually just call it.
I don't blame him, dude. He's had a good career. Just give it up. It was a good run.
Yeah. I've got Hollywood Brown going back to the Chiefs. I don't really see. It just kind of makes sense. He missed an entire year, so
I kind of think he's gonna get a 1-year prove it from some team, some stupid team. Like a good, like, like how the Jags seem to do this every year with like the Gabe Davis or whatever. Like somebody's going to do it. Like just because he's still like kind of young and can play. And we know he's fast. Everybody loves fast players. So I can see it.
And then these last few are just my favorite. I've got Darius Slayton to the Jets because I love Darius Slayton. He'd be a great fit.
That is a good fit.
I've got Keenan Allen to the Commanders.
What do you think Darius Slayton's market value is?
1 year 7.
They got him on here as 1 year 15 mil.
Oh, wow.
They like him.
They
say market value is 3 years 47.
I mean, he's a 2 or 3 time receiving leader for the team he's played on. If that's the way you want to like shape it as a.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't know if I could give him 15 mil, but like some dumb team might.
I would love Slayton on like a deal with the Eagles. I don't know what the Dotson contract is. I think he might still be on next year, but he's like an ideal wide receiver 3 to me.
I would love to have Slayton. He's fast. He can stretch the field. He could play outside. Like he's a good depth guy for sure. He's making 6 this year. So
yeah. Okay. Maybe like 1, 8, 9, somewhere in that range. I think it's definitely like a flyer. Maybe go to a team where the passing game is going to be good and you can kind of get a boost from that.
Deontay Johnson made 18 mil this past year.
Oh yeah. Speaking of Deontay Johnson. Okay, so Keenan Allen to the Commanders and then Deontay Johnson to the Steelers. Back to the Steelers.
Shit.
Back to Pittsburgh. My favorite landing spot. I think it's hilarious. I would
honestly I would love it if he just wasn't in the league. Like how cool would that be?
He's been a jackass.
That's what I'm saying. Like I feel like it'd be hilarious if he did. They say his market value is 1.3. That's insane.
In thinking of him, I was like, who's going to want to put up with this? Oh, somebody already has put up with this.
3 people have tried to put up with this.
Give him back to Tomlin.
Yeah. And he
Maybe
can. He's at least proven he can get something out of him.
maybe he's humbled. He goes back there. He knows what's going on. I don't know. I don't
I
think
don't think he's
is
cooked
no.
because he did well with those Panthers games.
Yeah, his first few weeks in Carolina were great. He's put up numbers.
Let's see what I want to see what Hollywood's market value is. I'm curious.
And just for the shits and giggles, I
Deep.
put Mike Williams to the Cowboys because we dumb
And that's
boys.
a classic fit. Like they'll give him like a 1 year, $7.5 million, and he'll play noteless snaps. It'll be
Mhm.
that's such a Cowboys thing to do. Look what we side. It's too obvious to me. DJ Chark is a free agent again. That's exciting.
Ooh, yeah, should have written him
I'm
down.
looking down the list to see if there's anybody that like remotely interests me down here. It's not good. De'Ami Brown had a decent little year.
Yeah, I was originally going to put him down, and then I continued living my life, and it didn't happen.
De'Ami Brown seems like a guy that somebody will overpay.
Maybe.
There's really nothing here that's good, man. It's a bad year. Brandon Cooks is
Yeah.
a free agent. That's exciting at 32 years old.
And then the tight end free agents are brutal. It's Ertz, Gesicki, Conklin, Juwan Johnson. I have Ertz going back to Washington if he doesn't retire. Gesicki back to the Bengals, and then Juwan Johnson to Denver because Sean Payton.
Oh boy, did you know Pharaoh Brown was making 3.2 this past year
for
Seattle?
New England? Seattle. Yeah.
I didn't even know he was on a roster, let alone 3.2 mil.
Yeah. I think he was on New England the year before.
That is brutal. Tyler Conklin 6.7 last year. Oh, what's his market value? That's a fun one. 9 mil. Excuse me.
He catches balls.
I would never pay Tyler Conklin 9 million. Okay, anywho, yeah, not great landing spots, and I gotta be honest, I'm just not really impressed. Like, even if any of these players sign it to a good spot, I just don't feel good about the player itself. So it's just not good. And my favorite free agent is Harrison Bryant. I've been on stand for years, and he's just never hit. But maybe this is a shot.
Didn't write him down. Not there. So sorry.
Mackey Award winner, best tight end in college football. Anywho, that's the landing spots for the free agents. Now, that will lead us into the meat and potatoes of this show. The 64 pick, 32 first rounders at least, and then the landing spots for the other position players in the second round. So, Sean, let's start with. We're not going to do the whole mock. We'll just do the fantasy relevant or dynasty relevant spots. So, who is the first dynasty relevant pick off the board for you? And I'll write them on the bottom in the ticker as I go.
Sure. Yeah. At 3, I have the Giants taking Cam Ward as the first offensive position player off the board.
Okay.
First fantasy relevant guy.
And I feel like there's going to be at least one quarterback taken in the top 6. Is that fair to say? Because the 6 are the Raiders, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I've got Shador at 6, so I guess I would have 2 in the top 6. I think I've seen somewhere between 1 in the top 6 to 2 in the top 3. So, I mean, I don't know.
I don't feel good about it. So I mean,
if I'm talking big board, Shador is like closer to like the end of the first round for me.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot recently. To me, he's in the 20s or lower. I mean,
right now I see him as like a serviceable starting quarterback with no elite traits. I mean, you could call toughness an elite trait if you want. He got hit a fucking ton in college, but I was telling you a couple weeks ago, like if he's got that like motor where he's like just fast enough, like that Patrick Mahomes, like he's just fast enough to avoid everything.
I think that's what he has.
It props him up to me, but like it's just not something I've seen yet, and it's really hard to quantify.
It's hard to project something like that. And I feel like I think I said it during the prospect propaganda show. I feel like he's a very Teddy Bridgewater, Geno Smithy kind of guy, where it's not a lot of athleticism to make crazy plays, but accurate, good at reading the field, but nothing flashy. And that's kind of the vibe I've gotten, and I'm okay with that.
My comp for him is Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I mean, just efficient. If he gets in a good system, sure.
Yeah. Bryce Young in that mold too. He's a little bit bigger than Bryce Young. He's not much bigger than Bryce Young, which is why that kind of.
He's not that big. No,
he's right. He's 6'1", like 198. 200. Probably they'll probably list him at 200 after the combine just because those numbers sound good.
And I would say neither of these landing spots, 3 and 6, would make me feel great about taking either one in the top 2 rounds of our rookie draft.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, you're getting a starter more than likely.
yes.
But outside of that, are you excited about the starter? I mean, you get Shador probably would make me excited for the tight ends
Yeah.
in Vegas, I think for sure. Cam would make me excited about the A dot for neighbors because Cam Ward will just let it go. Also
Yeah.
exciting, but as far as just them as fantasy relevant players, I just don't see how they would make it into like the top 20 to 25 quarterbacks next year.
No, I mean,
Like
to me,
redraft
they're
scenario.
in our draft, at least for the rookie draft, I would say
Right.
they would be thirds at earliest at this point. So,
Mhm.
all right, let's go to the next one on your list here.
So Shador is at 6, and then I've got Tyler Warren at 7 to the Jets.
All right, so that's an interesting one. I think we talked enough about Tyler Warren on the previous podcast. I like him. Sean, I'm sure you probably like him as well. It seems like there's not a lot to dislike at this point. So
I do.
I will say the hype is getting pretty insane for him. So I kind of feel like in my head I want to temper some expectations for him a little bit, where it's like he's still a tight end. Rookie tight ends historically not huge producers, right out the gate, and take a little time to get going. However, there has been some pretty good use cases recently of
Say
that working out. Obviously, myself
tell that to
included
Brock
with
Bowers.
Bowers. I mean, it's. I just don't feel, especially in this landing spot, not knowing the quarterback really. I mean, I guess Justin Fields is the quarterback here. It doesn't feel great right out the gate for Dynasty. But that being said, I think he's more than talented enough to be a first round pick in our Dynasty draft. So let's
Yep.
go to the next one.
Yeah. Next up is just the very next pick at number 8. I've got Carolina taking Ted McMillan.
And that's been a popular landing spot recently.
It's a team that desperately needs defense, but I think they desperately want to validate Bryce Young.
You got to get him some help. I mean, like they have good players. I think they're losing Thielen as well.
Lose Thielen, you've got Coker, you've got
Coker and Leggett are good.
And I think Tet is very much like if you're building that basketball team of a wide receiver room, I think that really slides in well. I think those are 3 very distinctly different wide receivers.
Yeah, and a play caller that's pretty familiar with using a big guy like him, with obviously Mike Evans. So it kind of makes sense there. And I think Evans was pick 9, so it's kind of in the same range as that. Now, I don't think Tet's close to that as a prospect. I think Evans.
Yeah, I see him as like a top 10 on big boards. I don't have
like
him
that
in the top 10. I think he's probably like in the teens, maybe late teens for me personally. But I think with the lack of talent in free agency and the lack of depth at receiver, I think some of these guys are going to get propped up quite a bit in this draft.
That's a great point. That's a really good point. I feel like because of that, I mean, literally once you get past, I think wide receiver 3 or 4, you're just kind of shooting darts at that point. There's not really like the depth that we've seen in recent years. So a guy like Tet could really move up.
That would bring me to the next pick at 12. I have Dallas taking Luther Burden.
Oh, wow. That's a spicy one. I mean, he definitely fits like it would be a great pick for Dallas, to be honest with you, because they need another receiver. Like, I mean, CD is awesome, but without Cooks for a chunk of last year, I don't think Jonathan Mingo is doing anything. That was one of the worst trades I've seen. They don't have any depth at receiver. There's no depth in the receiver class. Like I can see them signing a Slayton. Like they need help there somewhere, and I don't think they're going to get it in rounds 3, 4, 5. They're going to have to go spend for one if they want one this year. And if you're already paying Dak and you're already paying Lamb, I don't think you're going to go spend any money on a receiver. So you might as well just draft one at some point. But I think this is an interesting landing spot because a lot of people have Genty here. And I haven't seen Burden here a whole lot. I have seen McMillan here a couple of times.
Right. Yeah, that makes
So, yeah.
sense. And if he falls, I can't see his floor being lower than 12 in this draft. I think that's definitely his floor. I think anywhere from 7 to 12 is where we're going to see McMillan drafted. So
Yeah, I don't think he's gonna. I saw him at. I think DJ had him at the Bucks pick at 19. I just don't see it.
I don't believe that. Like I said before, like there's just so
Somebody's gonna take
few
him.
options out there for potential at receiver. I think it's going to really move these guys up.
Yeah, and he has special traits. Like I think I got on the prospect propaganda podcast saying that like I sound a little bit like a hater probably, but I think the more I think about it and I've watched more tape of him, his hands are unbelievable. He's huge.
Yeah, I
He
mean,
can separate. He's not going to be a bad player.
if you were to see this and you were in a coma the whole year before this, you would say 12 is too late for
Right.
Burton. So that 2023 is crazy. Like he looked all the bit of like a number one receiver in the NFL.
He has a lot of neighbors in him, man. There's a lot of
I
neighbors there.
I see a lot of Amon Ra there.
Similar. I don't think
I
he's
think
as refined, but yeah.
yeah, I think in that kind of the only thing that's really bringing back for me like it's hard to justify taking the player at 12 when he can't do everything at the receiver position on the field, and I just don't think he's gonna be able to do that for you as a
Right.
receiver.
Right.
But at the same time, he's fucking electric with the ball in his hands, and he doesn't have to be the number one guy, and it really makes I I wouldn't want to play against him and CeeDee Lamb on the field. I think that would
No, I
be
think that would be a
a headache.
hell of a pair, and really no excuse for Dak at that point. I mean, with him, Ferguson, assuming they get a running back later on in the draft, like that would be a pretty sweet fit. Let's go to the
Mhm.
next one, Sean. Who's next?
Yeah, sure. So we got a little bit, not even a big jump. I've got the Colts taking Colson Loveland at 14. I know yourself and I've heard a couple other people not as big on Colson Loveland. I think that's going to be the opposite for a lot of teams in the NFL. I think they're going to be really big on him, and I think it makes just sense to keep adding weapons to this room to really, once again, just like I was talking about Bryce Young getting validated as a pick. I think you really got to try and validate this Anthony Richardson pick.
Yeah, I think he's a good fit, and I would say that I don't feel like I'm down on Loveland. I just feel like I have him ranked different. Like I think he could be a really good player. I think he's got a lot of great traits. Um, I think he's definitely out of the two, Warren and Loveland. If you tell me who might be a better fantasy player, I could
Warren,
definitely see Loveland being a better fantasy player.
interesting.
Um,
Okay,
I could see it because
in like a PPR format, yes.
for sure, yes,
With our league, I think it's gonna be Warren. It's funny because I've heard you comp and you've heard comps for George Kittle for Warren.
I think that's possible.
I I think Loveland is Zach Ertz.
Oh, and I've heard the Ertz comp a couple of times, and I like that as well. I think that's definitely in the range of outcomes. I think the problem is Loveland for me, as opposed to Warren, is more of a projection. Whereas Warren, I think you're getting, I think you're right there. I think you're just in it. I think you know what you're getting, and I think Loveland, you still have a little bit of work to do to find out what he is.
I'm a little more forgiving on how bad his situation was this year in Michigan.
Yeah, it was not
So that might
ideal.
be why I'm probably a little more like okay, like this is fine. Like your top 15 pick, I don't have a problem with Loveland.
Yeah, so like top 15 to me is just not something I would do if I was on an NFL team. But I think he's more of I would be more comfortable taking him later on, kind of like a Noah Fante type of guy. Like where it's like not I wouldn't spend top capital on him, but I wouldn't like a late first is fine. Like I would be okay with that.
Sure.
But for our dynasty league, we can wait and talk about that during the mock draft, and we can see where he ends
Mhm.
up. But also too, I can't remember a good off the top of my head. When was the last time Michigan had a good draft prospect tight end that worked out in the NFL? Like I can't like I remember
You're
Jake
the
Butt.
draft. You're the
Like I'm
you go
gonna
further
type in
back than me.
Michigan tight end draft picks, and let's see what I can find. Because I just like don't really off the top of my head. I'm just like, man, have they like? Because obviously Penn State, Notre Dame, they're putting out studs every year. Iowa,
Mhm.
but like Michigan just never really comes to the top of my head. Let's see here. So we had, oh boy, there's some fun names in here. Tim Massaquoi, Luke Schoonmaker was picked in the second round. That has not worked out. AJ Barner last year was 4th round. Jake Butt was a 5th round pick. Hey, Sean, that's it. I gotta be honest, since 1970. That's as far as this goes back. So it's not a good track record for Michigan. Oh my God, Sean, there was a tackle that was drafted from Michigan in 1988 named Jumbo Elliott.
That's
I would have taken him 1st overall with
very
that name.
appropriate name. I like it.
Jumbo Elliott. That's almost as good as Venison Jones.
Inside jokes.
It's an absolute legend name. Okay, let's go to next on the list. We're at 14 with Loveland. What's next?
What? Everybody is like, where is Ashton Genty going?
I'm asking myself that question right now. I didn't really look at your mock, so I could be surprised here.
I've got him going to Denver at 20.
Is that the next one on the list?
Yes.
Okay, so the next offensive player skill position was Denver, and boy, that would be an interesting fit with Sean Payton. They have drafted running backs in the first. Obviously, Mark Ingram when he was in New Orleans, so that's not out of the question. But do you think this is the floor for Genty?
I think 22 is the floor.
And that's Chargers?
Chargers, yeah. So,
yeah, okay. That's to me, like 20, based on all the big boards and what you've seen in the mocks, it seems awful low. But as I was saying earlier, the depth of the running back class this year is great. And I have a hard time believing that somebody's going to spend up when they know they can get a Cam Scatterbo or a Devin Neal or an Ollie Gordon or what. Like, there's just so many guys that, like, I just don't know if it's truly worth spending that level of capital. On the other side of things, there's not that many players with 1st-round grades. So, like, he could go much higher than, based on big boards.
And I will say I'm 1 pick ahead of Daniel Jeremiah's mock that came out yesterday. He has him going 21 to the Steelers.
Okay.
Which brings me to the next player, because there's not much we can really talk about Genty at this point. Like, he's going 101, I think, regardless of landing spot.
It would have to be like a horrific spot, like the Jets or something.
I've got Pittsburgh taking Hampton with the very next pick,
which is music to my ears. So Pitt, Omari, and Hampton. Yeah, I mean, obviously they're potentially losing Harris. Seems like the natural fit for that early down banger role. Warren's still there for another year. I love the player. I think it would be a phenomenal fit for him.
He might be one of my, if not my favorite player in the class. I mean, that doesn't mean I like him more than Genty. He's just I love the well-roundedness of his game. He's probably the best pass pro back in this draft. I love that.
There.
That's
he's up there.
That's got to be one of my favorite traits in a running back. Like, Barkley not having a great Super Bowl kind of undermines the fact that, like, his pass pro on some of those blitzes from Spags in the Super Bowl was something that the Eagles have not had in the last 3 or 4 years. So
for Hurts, it's kind of necessary too. I mean, I'll say this one more point on Hampton is, like, dude, like you said, well-roundedness. Yes, he's a great pass pro. He can catch. I wouldn't say that's like the best part of his game. He's powerful as hell. He's an athlete. This guy's a serious athlete, like former track background. He he squatted 600 pounds in high school. Like, this guy he's a freak. So I'm thinking the NFL is going to love him.
The biggest thing for me is he produced even after Drake May left.
Yeah.
And that team with Drake May on it still, like, around May and Hampton, was not good.
No, their offensive line was mid. I mean, he produced, like I said in the podcast a couple weeks ago, he's one of only 4 players in ACC history to run for back-to-back 1,500-yard years. Like, there's a lot of good ACC backs over the years. Like, I mean,
and I'll spoil it for later if I have the pick, or if I don't have the pick. I think he's the 102 for me.
Yeah, I mean, like I've said it on the podcast last week that, like, assuming Genty goes 1, like, it would be, unless he lands in a shitty landing spot, it would be hard for me to say no to Hampton at 2. So not much of a surprise. Who's next on the list?
That's the very next pick. I've got the Chargers taking Emeka Egbuka at 22. I think
that's a fun one.
I think a lot of people have Golden going ahead of him. For me, in particular, it's just a scheme pick. For me, Egbuka is one of the best blocking wide receivers in this draft. He's a hard-nosed guy. He's a hardball guy.
I think he's a Harbaugh guy. He's from a big program, obviously. He knows
It'll
big
break his heart to
programs.
take somebody from Ohio State, but I think he's the kind of
I
guy
don't think
that
he cares. I think he just wants the best player, dude. And like he's everything I know about Ibuka is that he's a team first guy. Obviously, he stuck around his senior year. He produced pretty much every single season, despite having monster players around him. Smith and Jigba, not Ryan Williams, the other guy,
Marvin Harrison.
Marvin Harrison Jr., Jeremiah Smith, like all these big name guys. He still put up numbers. I don't think it's a slight to him that he's not those guys, but I
Sure.
just love his hard nosed game,
I
and the NFL is going to love him.
It's such a safe pick, even if he's never going to be like that elite one at the receiver position. Like I have a hard time seeing him not being a very good pro for a while.
Yeah, he might not end up being like, a wide receiver 1 in Dynasty or a wide receiver, maybe even a 2. But like you can't tell me he's not going to be less than a 3. Like he seems
Yep.
like a really solid player that you can just count on. I have him comped to like a Terry McLaurin, where it's just like I feel like he's got a lot of the like he's not super flashy and he doesn't do anything that's like gonna blow your mind athletically or anything like that, but he just makes plays and I'm good with that. I'll take him in the first round. I'm like if you told me him or Golden, it's not even a question for me. It's like Buga. So
Sure. Yeah.
Who's next?
All right, at 24, I have Minnesota taking Travion Henderson.
Ooh.
I will say I would guess 100% that they trade out of that pick. But I wasn't doing trades in this mock. Minnesota has 3 picks in this draft, I think.
Yeah, they got to get some capital.
They're gonna trade down, and
stuff.
They could still be there if he trades down, like when they trade down. So
yeah, if they can get back to like 30 or something, like they still might have a shot.
They are a team that very much needs a running back. They also have a couple other needs, but they have a lot of cap space. So free agency is going to tell a lot about what this team is going to do for me. And I think running back right now is where I wanted to go with that. And I think
seems like a natural Jones replacement as well.
Yeah, I think it's just a good fit. I don't love their run game for all the success of that offense. The running game under them has not been great, and I don't know if that's a personnel scheme, what's going on, but I'd love to see a guy with some juice that's not towards the end of his career take over that backfield. So
yeah, and he's another guy we're talking about pass pro. He's one of those guys that doesn't have to come off the field. He can block for his size. He can make it happen. Mm-hmm. Next up on the list, who we got?
It's the very next pick, Houston. I've got taken Matthew Golden.
All right, Houston, Matthew Golden. I have seen that a couple times recently, and it really makes sense because I think somebody comped him to, who's the guy that a lot of Diggs comps? Yeah, that's right. And if that's the case, what can't really get a much more clean fit than that.
Mm-hmm. They're gonna have Nico and not much else after it this season.
They're hurting right now for depth. And
it's
that makes
Hutchinson. Sense. It's man, we're out of fantasy season. I can't remember anybody's name.
Xavier Hutchinson, John Mechie.
Thank you.
I mean, it's just not exciting stuff.
Yeah, the corpse of Bobby Trees, if he's alive still.
He might be a free agent too. Who knows? Like
he is.
Not that it matters. It's just sad. I love Bobby Trees, but all right, who's next on the list?
So this starts the second round.
Okay, here's where it gets interesting.
At pick 33, I've got Cleveland taking Caleb Johnson. Which that could easily be a quarterback too. You could definitely see a
Jackson Dart spot
or Tyler Shuck or whatever, however the hell you say his name.
It is Shuck. You're right. Boy, that would be ugly.
Yeah, I like running back for that spot though. I think I really see them just bringing in a Jameis back and just kind of re-rolling, maybe taking a shot with like a Milrow or something like that later in the draft, maybe.
Yeah, like a Milrow makes a lot of sense. I mean, frankly, like I think it's a bad quarterback class, but there are guys in this class that I actually like as later picks. For example, I really like McCord from Syracuse. I think he's a guy that actually could be like pretty good and start in the league. Shuck is, I don't think he's a first round player or a second, but I think like he has traits that you could believe in. Milrow has traits you might be able to get behind.
I mean, he's got freak athlete. He's going to crush the combine.
Yeah, I've heard that. I was listening to a podcast today where Ryan Williams from Alabama said that Jalen Milroe is the fastest player on Alabama,
I
which
think
is
he's going to be in
crazy.
the 4.3s.
If he's a 4.3 quarterback, I don't know how. I don't think he can get past round 3 just based on athleticism.
I I think he's going to be around 2 if he crushes as hard as he
If
does.
everything is pointing that way, yeah. But anywho, Caleb Johnson at 33. Interesting landing spot. Obviously, Chubb is he could come back, he could not. Either way, they probably need another back. So that definitely makes sense. And Johnson's not, a pretty good fit there. Honestly, Johnson and Chubb don't. I don't think they have a lot of similarities, but definitely similar size back and like kind of the role fits there.
Yeah, I think just the patchwork that they've tried to do since the Chubb injury has got to be just Stefanski's got to be over it at this point. He
It's just
probably
they're
just
not
wants to be the
getting
guy.
great production. Like
And
the yards per carry for Jerome Ford isn't great. It's just not exciting.
I think ideally they'd love a tackle, but I think just the way this mock turns out, I think it just makes sense for them to just kind of get another skill guy in there. Frankly, for a skill position group on that team that I just don't love.
It's
I
not
think
good, Sean.
I think it gets kind of like meh, okayed by the media, like it's fine, like we're good here. I think it's bad.
It's definitely below average at best for me.
David Njoku is probably their best player on offense, and like I like him. He's
He's
fine. He's
fine.
got juice at the tight end position, but you're talking about a tight end that's not like a elite guy as your best player, and I don't know that
I don't
ain't it.
like it.
That ain't it for me, fam. So
To me, like if you're Cleveland, you haven't had you just don't have quarterback production. So what do you got to do? You got to run the ball. So
yeah,
like I mean, this fit makes perfect sense for me. You
Stefanski
got to
back
do
to
something.
his offense that's not designed around the fucking I don't know the fucking evil man, whatever the hell. So yeah, I like running back there, and I mean we can go to the next pick. I've got
Yep.
Tennessee taking Jackson Dart at 35.
Ooh. Just re-rolling the
So
Will Levis special.
sign the Darnold, and then draft the second round development guy. See what you can do.
Yeah, I mean, like for them, they just need quarterback talent. Just I don't think it matters
Mm-hmm.
at this point. Like they're gonna take a quarterback, whether it be second, third, what they'll find a way to get another quarterback on the roster. This landing spot I think would not be great for our league, like dynasty
Sure.
value. Probably would
Yeah,
not be
yeah, yeah.
ideal, but
No doubt. I don't think
super flex leagues would be okay
any
with it.
any quarterback after those first two aren't going to be a starter. At least not until like just the end of the year kind of thing thrown
Yeah, I
in.
think we're talking like waiver draft picks at this point for our draft.
Sure.
5 through 7. Who's next on your
Yep.
list?
38. I've got New England taking Jaden Higgins,
Okay.
receiver.
And that would be kind of a guy that they don't really have right now, which
Yeah,
is
he's
a good idea.
big catch radius wide receiver for Drake May. Kind of fits the opposite of like what they have, like you said, on the roster right now. They need something. I like Higgins. I don't know, like based off of this class, like he's good. I think it's a weaker class for me, so it's not ideal to take him as like a top 40 pick. But you need something. You got to
Well,
take it.
it's interesting because like Higgins for me, I thought as I was evaluating earlier in the summer season, like he was a guy that I was interested in. Obviously, he fits the armadillos prototype, a bigger guy, big catch radius, all that stuff. And I was like, oh, this guy could be a pretty good value this year. Like I might be able to get him later, but the depth of the class just isn't quite there. So like a guy like Higgins moves up. I've seen him as early as the first, like late first, like which is crazy to me because to like if I were thinking of him in last year's class he probably would be like a fourth round pick probably in last year's class. So it's kind of strange to talk about him at 38 to me or wherever we have him at 38. But like because I thought he was going to be a sleeper guy and he's no longer a sleeper guy. So I like the player, and they've had a interesting history of wide receiver draft picks recently with Xavier Hutchinson, also a similar type player, Hakeem Butler, also a similar type player. So there's like they have these guys, they haven't really worked out. Neither one of those guys were a day 2 pick though. So if it changes, Iowa State has been quietly been putting up decent prospects recently, especially like
Yep.
tight end wise. They had Charlie Kohler, obviously they had Brock Purdy. So like I don't feel as bad taking a guy like this that high. I'd be interested to see where he goes in our draft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, next up.
I've got the Jets at 42 taking Tyler Shuck. We can just move on if you want, if you don't want to talk about
I mean, I'll say this on Tyler Shuck. Like, I get why the NFL is interested. He played. He was devastated with injuries his whole career. I watched him at Texas Tech because I'm close to here. He has traits that people are gonna like. He's in that Blaine Gabberty, Jevin Sneed, whatever you want to call him. Like, he's got the traits. And if he's not a first round pick, be like high first round pick. So like to me, if he ends up in the second, third, or whatever in that Mike Glennon range, sure, fine. But the idea of him going in the first, which I saw was floated by Todd McShay, I thought that was crazy.
Todd's a crazy man in general. So
what was the team for that one again? Sorry,
the Jets.
Jets. That's okay. Yeah, I mean, like to me, he goes to the Jets, he's gonna have a horrific career. So it's just not ideal.
That's why, like, I didn't want to. Like, who wants to go to the Jets? Like, I think
nobody wants to be there. I don't think
people like I see like on podcasts like ranking like what situation you don't want as like a head coach, and like everybody keeps saying the Saints is like their worst destination, which I get because they're in cap hell. But the Saints aren't going to fire you. They take forever to do anything. Like, you have job security.
You at least have security. I mean, and the Jets just have no track record.
You piss off a 19-year-old, you're going to get fired in New York. Like,
I mean, if you're mad, if his Madden rating isn't high enough, you could be cut.
Yeah,
it's kind of wild. Let's keep moving. Next on the list.
Yeah, 47. I've got Arizona taking Trey Harris. This is just a personal, like, I would really like somebody else to be running the go routes other than Marvin Harrison, because what are we doing?
I will say this. I watched a decent amount of Arizona last year, frankly, because I'm a big Michael Wilson supporter.
I do like Michael Wilson.
Now, here's the problem, Sean. He is not – they put him in that role, and that doesn't work. Like, I don't know who's running the offense there. I can't remember anymore. But whatever happened out there, they had the wrong personnel running the wrong routes. Like, they need to find a field stretcher, and Harris is a great, perfect, big guy, fast guy, perfect fit.
The offense is designed to open things up for the backs and Trey McBride, which is fine, except for the part where you're drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. with a top 5 pick. Like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it just like Neighbors would have been the better pick if that's kind of what you were going for. The field stretching type.
He would have been a decoy too.
That's the thing, is it really wouldn't have mattered too much. I don't know. So I mean, like, I'll say this on Trey Harris. I feel like he's an interesting prospect. I think he's a little underrated compared to some of the people in this class right now.
I like him.
I think he's a good quality prospect, and I like Ole Miss players at receiver because they have a good hit rate usually.
They do be hitting.
So I mean, it's a good fit, but like I would really like to see them use Michael Wilson in the right spot. Let alone Harrison in the right spot. So who knows?
I think this next one, you better hold on to your seat.
All right, I got my hands are on the keyboard. I'm ready.
Right, at 51, I've got Denver taking Harold Fannin Jr.
Holy shit, that's high. And I will say this, Sean, I vehemently disagree with you on this pick because I don't think don't get me wrong, I like Harold Fannin. First of all, phenomenal name. Tremendous name. Harold Fannin Jr. I mean, he's a bomber at heart.
If I'm doing this based off of what I would do, Harold Fannin would be like an end of the day 2, I think. Pick.
Yes.
For me.
He'd be a third, probably.
But
I think Elijah Arroyo will be I think he might go high second.
Okay.
I think it's very possible Elijah Arroyo ends up in the 30s.
Listen, Fannin is not a top 5 tight end for me in this class. He was exceptionally productive
not a high
last year.
Tight end. Yeah, I mean, I can't really argue with it. Like
he had 1,500 yards out of the tight end position last year.
No, he's sick.
It's insane, but he isn't it for me. But what I'm trying to pass on here is him going to Denver is Sean Payton loves a guy like this. He's going to put him
he's a Juwan Johnson type.
He's going to use him. He's going to Taysom Hill him. He's going to put him in that Joker position that he loves to talk about. Like, that's his kind of guy. And
I can also see the same for Arroyo. He fits very similarly.
Yeah, I think he's more just like a move tight end. I think Fannin you can put literally anywhere. you
Yeah,
want
I mean, like
outside of like blocking, but
yeah, I mean, you don't want either of these guys to block. That's not what they're there for.
sure.
But like Fannin, I think he's an interesting character just because the production is unreal. Like you can't really. There's not many times where you can look back in history at tight end and see like that level of production. So at that some point you have to just kind of be like, okay, I'll take a shot on it. Like you said,
Mhm.
I would like to see him in the third probably if I was on a big board type of deal.
Sure.
But the
Yep.
fit makes sense here. I like Fannin as like an Isaiah Likely. That's kind of what I've had him. He's not huge. He's a good receiver. Can get open. He did not impress me at the Senior Bowl. I'll say that. He had a chance to impress at the Senior Bowl. He did not. And Elijah Royal basically took his spot. So I thought that was interesting. But somebody's going to like this guy. And if they do, this could absolutely happen. Next up.
All right. Yeah, we've got at the very next pick, Pittsburgh. I've got taken Jalen Royals.
Jalen Royals, which another guy, interesting guy that kind of has risen over the last month or so. I gotta say, like, I haven't watched a ton of him, so I'm not gonna speak too much on him. But there's a lot of people really like him, and I know that he has had an interesting college career. His production profile isn't great, but there's a lot of things to like. He's kind of in that, bulky, 6'2" 200 range.
He's going to
And
catch a lot of Debo comps,
yeah, I've heard he's like from an athlete standpoint,
which
he's very good.
I refuse to comp anybody to somebody that in their peak was like a one of one kind of player. So not
Yeah, I mean,
that's
I
not for
hate
me.
doing that as well.
He is exceptionally good balance in his routes.
Huh.
I think that's a really
I've
good.
heard DJ Moore. What do you think about that?
It makes sense. He's so good with the ball in his hands. I think that is definitely fair. I think DJ Moore, considering how poor his situation was in college, like the production he did was insane. So definitely not at that caliber, but definitely in that like that realm of player for sure.
Pittsburgh needs a guy
But
like that.
they do. They just need to get the ball in his hands and go, and that kind of opens up your Pickens and your run game a little more. Like you can be. I think that's a kind of guy that Arthur Smith will like. I know they took a receiver last year, and they take him in the second round.
They took
When did
Roman in the third, I want to
I
say.
liked Roman Wilson coming out, but he is probably a slot only receiver.
That
Most
was the
likely.
knock on him coming out, is that he was pretty much a slot guy,
And he
which is
missed
fine.
basically the entire year. I think this is just another kind of guy that they can add. Who knows if they even have Pickens on this team, given how just fucking crazy
He's a
that guy is.
Jagaloon, yeah. I mean, he's a complete Jagaloon. Anything could happen with him. I mean, they definitely need to add. I'll say this for the Steelers, just in general, they got to add offensive talent. They have to. I mean, obviously Hampton in the first, Jalen Royals here in the second. Like I could see this happening 100%. They just got to get some talent on this offense. Next on your list, please.
All right. Next is going to be going to the Chargers. I have Mason Taylor,
What pick is that?
55.
55. LA Charger. And sorry, one more time. Who was that?
Mason Taylor.
Oh, Mason Taylor, the tight end. Okay. Yes, this is a guy that has really risen up over the last few weeks.
Nepo, baby.
Yeah, he, son of Jason Taylor, which is obviously great bloodlines there.
Yeah.
I've heard. I gotta be honest. I haven't watched a ton of him, so I won't say too much on him. But I've heard the NFL is going to love him because he does everything well and nothing like super great. That leads me to believe like most teams would take that guy in the second.
That's why I went with him as opposed to a guy like Arroyo, just because I think Harbaugh and that
he's a
offense
Harbaugh guy for sure.
is going to appreciate a guy that kind of do it all. Arroyo is not going to give you as much in line, if any.
I don't think he's going to play at all in line. Like
So
it'd be
he's a
minimal.
tough guy to find a spot for me in the second round. I will tell you, he's not on my board. I think there's a very good chance he can go in the second round. He just wasn't on my top 64 for this mock, but I could definitely see that changing for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think with like what we were saying earlier, with not being so many first round prospects, that there's a chance that the guys like Arroyo and a Taylor, even Fannin, like any of those guys could be much higher than we're expecting. All right, one more player. Keep going.
All right. So the very next pick to Buffalo at 56, I've got them taking Jalen Noel.
Okay, Jalen Noel, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is he Utah State guy, or is that Royals?
That was Royals. Noel is. Fuck, where'd Noel's go? Hold
He
on.
was a smaller school, I think. I haven't, once again, I haven't watched too many of these guys quite yet. Like,
Yeah, I'm
I've really
still.
been
Yeah,
focusing on the
I'm still
top
getting to it.
guys. I've watched a lot of tight ends, though. I'll say I always watch tight ends, though. So
Iowa State.
that's right. I knew it was one of
Him
those.
and Higgins both coming out.
All right, and who did he go to on your pick here?
I've got him going to Buffalo at 56.
Okay, Buffalo. No. Yeah, I mean they need receiving talent. It's that simple. They
Yep.
just need more. They just need more players. I won't say too much. I know. Let's keep going.
All right, 61. I've got Washington taking Jack Betch. I actually don't know how to say his
Besh.
name. Besh. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
and he's a guy that's people really like him
Great,
in
good
the
Senior Bowl.
community. Very good at the Senior Bowl. Interesting profile. He was a tight end at LSU when he started. Kind of was an undersized tight end. They ended up moving him out to receiver, but then he had to be stuck behind Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors, Kayshawn Boutte at the time. So like he just couldn't get on the field. Goes to TCU, has a really good season, and frankly, he's just like a super well-rounded player. He's got some size.
I think
I
he
think the NFL will
complements
love him.
Terry very well as well. If we're talking
Absolutely.
about a fit, and I mean that's like my biggest thing. Like when I'm looking at a team, I know you can just go with like, oh, let's just take the best player and figure it out later. I really try to find like fits that make sense. Obviously, Washington needs a receiver, and he just kind of fits very well on that team. I think he fits a role where like who's catching that like 10 to 20 range ball, like the chain mover. Terry can do that, but like let's open up Terry to do the fun stuff too. Like I think he just fits very well on that team.
Yeah, the fit is great. He's kind of, to me, he's that perfect wide receiver 2 in the NFL. That can kind of just do a little of everything. I'm a big fan of his, and he can run routes and make plays. So he will be a solid pick for whatever team gets him. Is there any more here in the second?
Yeah, I've got one more. I've got Kansas City taking Quinshawn Judkins
Oh
at
boy.
63.
All right, so 63 Judkins. And I think we've talked a decent amount about him. So let's get ourselves into rookie draft mode. Sean, how do you feel about that?
Let's do it.
I think it's time to do a first round rookie mock draft just to see where we think people will land based on these landing spots. Obviously, we don't know the real spots, but let me see if I can pull up my other screen window. Let's see. There we go. Oh, look at that's beautiful. All right, so we're going to do just the first round based on these landing spots. So on the bottom, I have all the landing spots listed out in the ticker. We can do, how about I'll take odds. You can take evens. So that way I'm not picking for myself. And with 1-1, I think it's a pretty obvious selection with Ashton Genty landing in Denver.
Thought it was gonna be Fannin. Damn.
Yeah, I was willing to put Elijah Arroyo without a landing spot here. So I mean, anything is possible. I think this is, I like we talked about earlier, Sean. I just don't know, even if it's I mean, it's got to be like the Jets is the only way that you would maybe not consider it at 1-1, right? Like he's so good. Would you take him at 1-1 if he landed on the Jets?
Yes.
If everything we knew is right,
I think Brees is gone at that point. Like,
yeah, I mean, you would think. I mean, it's just so strange.
There's no way. Brees doesn't want to be there right now anyway, just based off of like his
just trade him, I guess,
and stuff. Like, yeah, he'd be out.
It just seems so unlikely that they would take him anyway. Yeah, but
just give me the snap call Hampton at 102.
All right, snap call Hampton. I mean, I'll be straight with you right now. Like with this landing spot set up, there's no doubt I would take him at 1-2. Also, I have his handcuff and Warren, so it just makes too much sense in this scenario. He's just a great player, and I need running backs, so that makes perfect sense for me. The next pick, of course, is not showing me the people who have the picks now, which is awesome. Uh, so I think the third pick here is James. So we'll roll with that. Who are you going to take here for James, Eric? Interesting. So our options, I think, are Tet McMillan to Carolina, Luther Burton to Dallas, and
Travion
then
to Minnesota.
Travion to Minnesota. For James's team, obviously we're in a full rebuild. We have Brian Thomas on the
Buck
squad.
the trend, take tight end.
I don't think that's going to happen until later. Maybe he has picked 6, Sean, so we can maybe talk about it at 6.
There we go. Okay.
Man, this is kind of tough because I'll say this with the landing spots. The way this plays out, I might like Burden more than McMillan, which is interesting, probably to some.
I did not think we were talking about 2 wide receivers when you were thinking.
I was considering it at least. You might be able to talk about Caleb Johnson, maybe. I just or Buga, like it's kind of tough. You have like a lot of options here. I think the really after 3, it can kind of go in a lot of different directions. Like you can kind of make an argument for a lot of guys. I think James likes Henderson probably, and the landing spot is good. There will be opportunities to get some other guys later, and I think this is kind of the way this is played out. These are 3 very good landing spots for running backs, all first-round draft capital. So I'm just going to go with Henderson because I feel like you got to take the first-round capital at running back and be safe.
That's what I would have done as well.
So let's go with that, and that's going to bring us to 4, which is Tibbs.
I will take Tet,
and I think that's just the logical thing based on draft capital. Maybe it's not the best landing spot. Maybe it's
their offense was pretty frisky at the end of last year. I would be pretty optimistic at this point.
I don't feel terrible about it. But there's other guys you can consider here. I don't think I don't think it's a walk it in 1-4. But you getting the top receiver at the 4th pick feels good probably. So yeah, I would go with that for him. I'd feel fine with that. Pick 5, we have Dustin, which he honestly could go in a lot of different directions. He kind of needs a little bit of everything. The Dallas Luther Burden spot is good. Ikbuga is a good spot.
He does love having wide receiver 2s on a team.
He certainly does. I mean, you got Tyler Warren has very high draft capital on this spot. Is kind of in the question for Dustin because he doesn't really have a difference maker at tight end. So I mean, I don't think it's out of the question to take Warren here, especially in a good landing spot. Well, not so great landing spot, but high draft capital.
You didn't need to take Bowers last year, and
I certainly didn't. He was a BPA guy for sure. I don't know if I would say he's BPA here.
Right.
Fuck it. Let's take Warren. We're gonna take Warren, and I just want to see how the rest of the draft plays out. I think this is more of like a case study thing for me. So because I think there's a lot of ways you can go, and if Dustin believes in Warren, like I believe in him as a player, you might be able to justify it here at 1-5. And then let's see how the rest of this plays out. So 6 is James, who gets Tyler Warren sniped from him, potentially at 1-6. So there's some options here.
So he's got Henderson. James likes a well-rounded draft, I imagine. So we'll give him Burden. Oh, he's got Lamb.
He's got Lamb. I was thinking Ikbuga maybe. Because James, I feel like Ikbuga's a James guy. You can get both Ohio State guys. What about a Harold Fannin off the top rope?
I know you're not a big fan of him, but I think I'm gonna give him Golden.
Didn't he have Dell, or did he trade away Dell? I can't remember. I think he traded him away.
He did.
Dustin? He's part of the Brian Thomas deal, maybe? Not Brian Thomas.
Yes.
I think he's one of those.
Tank Dell is on Dustin's team. Yeah, you're right.
All right, so Matt Golden at 1-6. Very interesting. And
he doesn't want to double up on them boys. So
yeah, I mean, this landing spot obviously tied to a good franchise quarterback. I can't be too upset with that pick at all. I like Ikbuga as a player better, but with McConkey there, and they don't really love to throw it a ton. Like maybe maybe that Chargers landing spot isn't super enticing, but I think it's fine, but it's not like enough to make me like jump up and down or anything. Next at 1-7 is, I want to say it's Dustin or Vince. I might have to can figure this out real quick because it's not showing me.
Give me a second. I'll get you.
I'm going to look real fast. It's funny how it shows it on
7 is Vince.
Okay, 7 is Vince. So we have quite a few options here. Based on draft capital landing spot, I think Luther Burden would be the pick here.
Yeah, I think Burden's a layup. He needs a receiver.
He needs a receiver. He's a potentially great player based on his 2023 film. High draft capital, good situation, going to get targets.
I think he would sprint to the podium on that pick. I think
he would sprint to the podium there as well.
Yeah, I think that's exactly who we'd be hoping for to fall.
Yeah, it would, to me, one of those three, or Buga, would feel good for him at 7. So I like that.
We're coming
we
back
have a
to
Dustin pick again.
Dustin at 1-8.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're gonna, let's see. So he has he's got Ginty, he's got Warren, and now he will have, I think you just keep going BPA here. I think we'll probably just go Caleb Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely needs running backs. There's no doubt about that. Johnson, high draft capital here at 33. He's going to get the ball. Like, you don't draft a guy at 33 and not give him the ball at some point. So I like Johnson as a player too. Like, I think there's a real possibility that he ends up in a very good landing spot, something better than Cleveland maybe. In the second round, gets a great landing spot, like the Dallas or something like that, and then he flies up the boards a little bit more. I've seen him a lot in rookie mocks in this 1-6 to 1-9 range, but I think if he gets a great landing spot, he could really bump up as well. So 1-9, this is going to be
Tibbs
because he lost in the championship. That's correct. So Tibbs. He's already taken McMillan, which is a fine pick here at 1-4, a really good pick, actually. I think the BPA would say to go with Egbuka based on draft capital.
Yeah.
I think this is kind of a slide for him, in my opinion. I just think he's such a solid player. And realistically, like, to me, out of most of the receivers this year, I feel like he's the most landing spot proof. Like, I don't think it really matters a ton what system he ends up in. Of course, like, if he ends up with a bad quarterback, sure, whatever. But I really like him just about anywhere.
I think this specific landing spot could make him fall just based off of the bias of like their running team,
right?
Kind of thing. So it wouldn't surprise me if he fell if he went to the Chargers. I think I also had him. I think at one point I had him going to the Rams, and I think that would be a good landing spot.
Rams would be a wonderful land. I think that's best case scenario. Dude, yeah. I love that spot for him because he fits. He makes sense. He actually plays a lot of Cooper Kupp type role. Like, if Rams was the landing spot, I bump him way up. To me, he definitely goes before Golden,
sure.
And maybe he's close to Burden, close to something like that. So that's a pretty sweet spot for the Rams if that were the case. We have our last pick in the first round here. It's Dustin here again at 1-10. So Dustin's already taken Genty. He's taken Warren, and then Caleb Johnson at 1-8. So I'm kind of fine. I'm trying to think of a receiver. I feel like receiver makes logical sense in terms of like positional need for him.
I think you just take this swing on Higgins potentially being the number one guy with Drake May.
And I will say this: if I know for a fact, we're only doing a 10-pick mock here. If let's say we get into the third round, for example, there's a lot of running backs that are still out there. I think that are worth taking. I mean, even a Judkins you could start considering here.
Well, I think Judkins is going to the Chiefs.
So I mean, it's not like. That's a weird landing spot because he does a lot of similar things to Pacheco. So I mean, like, if you believe in the talent, for sure you could take him here. I just feel like there's going to be guys that will get bumped up based on landing spot. But I think Higgins at least gives you a shot at a bigger target in a Drake May offense at this point.
Third round, Scatabo goes to the Raiders. Did I have somebody going to the Raiders?
I mean, there hasn't been a Raider receiver or running back yet in your mock, to my knowledge.
Nope. So to the Raiders,
that would be interesting.
I think he's probably in that conversation as like the 110, maybe.
Yeah,
higher.
I think you could argue higher because like the landing spots are so dependent for running backs. I feel like it's a very important piece of the process. And if let's say he goes second to any of the teams in second, like he's definitely in the first round of our draft. So I think there's at least I would say a handful, maybe 5 guys that didn't make the cut here in your mock in your second round that could easily end up in the first round based on landing spot. It's very dependent. But right now, I think based on what we see here, if he didn't take Warren already, I could see a Colston Loveland here, but because of the situation, we'll just go Higgins. Keep it simple. I don't know if the Judkins to Kansas City would be enough to warrant the 110 given the picks he's already made with Caleb Johnson and Genty. So I think this is what I would roll for right now. But obviously,
how like a few years can change things, given like Clyde going there a few years ago, like crazy.
Yeah.
You want to be a part of this like electric offense, and then is it?
Yeah, it feels okay. It's just not like nearly as good as it used to feel.
Mm-hmm.
Back in their heyday. I hate to even call it the heyday, but back when they were super explosive. It's only a couple of years ago. But that's going to be the first round mock. Hope you all enjoyed it. We haven't really done a whole lot like this before, but we'll probably do a couple more, I assume, as we get closer to the draft. It's definitely a good year for Sean and I to do this because obviously Sean doesn't have a first. I have the second overall pick, and it's it's kind of locked in almost at this point. Like some of the options.
You guys can rest assured that I'll find the gem in the draft in my late third round pick, and
everybody loves a good late third, Sean.
He'll be starting in championship week next year, so don't worry about it.
If you truly believe in that, more power to you. But we have a track record. We have a track record. I'm just looking for. I want a Bucky Irving is what I want. Give me one of those guys. Give me a Tyrone Tracy, Sean. I'll take your Tyrone Tracy.
This is the flip. It's a down wide receiver year, like it was a down running back year last year. That guy might pop out of nowhere at the receiver position this year. Who knows?
It very well could. I mean, I still think there's a lot of guys I like this year receiver. It's just not like they're just not as exciting as last. I mean, last year I feel like we got so spoiled last year that like a guy like a Jaden Higgins, like in my head, like we talked about earlier, it feels like a 4th, 5th round guy based on last year's class, but this year is just not the same. So it's kind of interesting how this draft is played out. But obviously, I feel like there's been a needed influx at the running back position of young talent, and we're finally getting it. And I think the NFL, with the success of the running back this year and the importance that it's kind of gotten its importance back, I guess, if you will, with Barkley and Henry and whatnot. I think it's going to be a really fun year to take running backs this year. And the fact that we only had 4 in the first round of this mock is a little surprising, but the landing spots kind of dictated that, in my opinion. And if we maybe got some different landing spots, you could easily see 4 or 5, 5 or 6, I should say, in the first, depending on how it goes. So we're at an hour and 20 here-ish, so we'll end it here. But thank you, Sean, for putting together the mock. Sean Kiper. We'll come back with another Sean Kiper mock at some point. Maybe a post-free agency, post-combine, something like that. Would maybe do this again because I think it's a good exercise, and I think everybody in the league likes, even if you don't have a pick, early or whatever. It's fun to see where guys might end up and how that would affect our dynasty landscape. So that's kind of cool. So we'll end it there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you at episode 55 or 85.